You said earlier on about the fact that you still view yourself quite lazy, and in a way, this still serves you. Do you mind just elaborating on exactly what you mean by that?
Hey Insider, I'm about to play the interview in a moment with a guy called Tom Bilyeu, a co-founder of a billion-dollar company called Quest Nutrition. You're going to really enjoy this episode today because he breaks down the routines, the habits you got to have to create a billion-dollar company. Pay close attention, my friend, and I hope you enjoy this interview with Tom Bilyeu.
I came across one of your video archives where you talk about, I think your mum or somebody basically didn't want you to eat chicken nuggets as it's unhealthy, so she gave you turkey nuggets instead.
Yes.
Now,
Yeah, very true.
So insiders tuning in right now, they can kind of see you work out and stuff. You seem very motivated as a person. Now, I understand from really just, I suppose, going over your story that it's not always been like this. So do you mind just sharing a slight glimpse of, how you really got to where you are today?
Yeah, so you're very right. It was not always this way. I didn't show signs of success when I was younger. When I left for college, my mother, who's always been my biggest cheerleader outwardly, quietly assumed I was going to fail. And I was very profoundly lazy. In fact, I still consider myself a very lazy person. I've used that to my advantage, and in trying to overcome some of my laziness, I put a lot of habits and routines that serve me well. But yeah, when I was a kid, I was really trying to be a good employee, keep my head down, do as little work as possible, avoid punishment at all costs. I mean, that's really been my life, or was my life growing up and well into my working career. I wasn't somebody who was, trying to be entrepreneurial minded, trying to be a linchpin employee. And that was something that I really had to learn, and came to need to learn that really out of desperation, out of failing at things that I wanted to be good at. I had a very fixed mindset. I thought that you were born with certain talents and intelligence, and that was it. It was fixed. And life is really about trying to position yourself to make the most of what you were given, and not realizing that I could develop a new skill set in any direction that I wanted to. I just had to put a lot of time and energy into it. But before I discovered that, I mean, dude, I considered myself the king of remedial jobs. I worked retail. I was selling video games at one point. So yeah, I'm not a born entrepreneur. I didn't start out on the traditional entrepreneur path of, having a lemonade stand or mowing lawns and stuff like that. Just didn't do any of that.
Okay. You said earlier on about the fact that you still view yourself quite lazy, and in a way, this still serves you. Do you mind just elaborating on exactly what you mean by that?
Yeah, because I know that I am lazy, I'm lazy and ambitious at the same time. So I have these huge goals and dreams and aspirations and things that I want to make come true. And at the same time, I just want to lay in bed all day. And when I encounter something hard, I just want to chill. I want to stop. And so to really overcome that, to push yourself through that, when you have the kind of ambition that I have, and I fanned those flames and really built an identity around being ambitious, not like, oh, I've just always had this burning desire. It started as an interest, like, oh, that would be cool. And you fan those flames until it's, a raging inferno. And so I have spent the time to fan the flames of ambition. And so to make sure that I overcome my laziness, to actually execute on my dreams, I had to develop habits, routines that help me get over that. So a very simple one, I go to bed early. So I prioritize sleep. I want to make sure that I get sleep. But
What
if
time
I,
normally?
what's that?
What time normally do you go to sleep?
I go to bed at 9 p.m. like it's a religion. And technically, I go to bed Sunday through Thursday at 9 p.m. On Friday and Saturday night, I go to bed when I want. And then I just sleep until I wake up. And I sleep about 5 to 6 hours. So I'm usually up by 3, 4 o'clock at the absolute latest. And then I give myself only 10 minutes to get out of bed. And that is literally just a code that I live by to make sure that I don't do what I want to do, which is lay in bed sort of, in that twilighty sleep, in the warm covers, which I went through a period of my life where I would lay in bed for 3 hours every day.
No way.
And so, yeah, that's embarrassing and absolutely horrifying. And I only share that so other people understand, like, just because that's your natural inclination doesn't mean that you have to give into it, and that you can build things into your identity, into your routines that force you up. So I give myself only 10 minutes to get out of bed, and days where I get out of bed in 10 minutes, I reward myself lavishly for sticking true to my identity. And on the rare occasion that I don't, and I miss it, and I get up, let's say in 10 minutes and 4 seconds, and I actually see the clock click over as I'm getting up, then that's a loss to me. And even though it's so slight, I don't get to feel good about that. And I punish myself emotionally for failing myself, just to make sure that I get out of bed in less than 10 minutes.
Amazing stuff. So after, I think one of the things you were saying is first thing you do is the gym. Am I right in saying?
Mm-hmm.
After that, what normally follows in regards to your morning routine?
So my morning routine goes like this. I go to the gym right away. I don't enjoy the gym, but for cognitive optimization, for strength, to look good naked, all true reasons to do it, and quite frankly, to earn credibility with myself, to show myself that even though I don't enjoy it, I show up, I've got the discipline to do it. And every day to have to overcome that voice that's like, oh, but you probably should go read that contract or whatever, to still go and show up and do it, even though I have excuses not to. And look, I'm not perfect, but I've got a pretty awesome track record with showing up at the gym. So that makes me feel good, and I know that I've got the discipline to do the hard things. And then just from an optimization standpoint, cognitively, physically, longevity, the gym is just critically important. And then it also teaches you the ability that we all have to adapt to a stressor, right? You put yourself under load, you make something hard, you make it difficult, you push yourself past the point of failure. Like, that's how you adapt the body. And it's the same way with the mind. You've really got to push. And David Goggins, one of the people that I had on Impact Theory, who's my favorite interview ever, said you need to callous your mind the way you callous your hands. And I thought that's really important. So showing up at the gym, that's my way of building those calluses, doing the hard thing. Immediately after the gym, I meditate. And I find that your intuition whispers, it never shouts. So if you really want to get clarity in your life about anything, about what makes you happy, about what you want to do, and just getting rid of anxiety and stress, you've got to meditate, which just quiets your mind. And I do it immediately following physical exertion, because physical exertion puts you into the sympathetic nervous system, which is fight or flight. Your heart rate is elevated, your breathing is elevated, you're pumping cortisol, it's that do or die mentality. Whereas when you're in meditation, you are switching out of that and you're triggering the parasympathetic nervous system, which is rest and digest, which puts you in an alpha wave brainwave state, which is calm and creative. And doing the two rapidly really teaches you how to do that quickly. So if you find yourself in a situation that's triggering your anxiety or your stress, or you can literally feel the blood leaving your prefrontal cortex as you enter into fight or flight. If that's inappropriate, you're not being chased by a lion, but you're in a business meeting or something, knowing how to rapidly, just through practice of meditating, knowing how to rapidly get yourself into a calm and creative state is insanely powerful. So that's why I juxtapose the two. And then being in that calm, creative state, I follow my meditation with what I call thinkitating. So in meditation, you're literally trying to quiet your mind. You're trying to not think. You're trying to focus on your breath. And that's actually how you lower your stress, your anxiety, that what I call background radiation. But I was beginning to resent meditation because I was having these amazing ideas and I was constantly trying to stamp them down, not think them. And then by the time I was done meditating, I'd forgotten them, but I had this lingering sense that, damn it, I had thought of something really cool and now it's gone. So once I allowed myself, I know that at the end of this, I'm going to thinkitate. So get in that calm, creative state, really just focus on my breath, make each part of the breath cycle pleasurable. But at the end of this, I'm going to leverage that state, continue my breathing pattern, but allow myself to think and take notes. And so I set myself to letting that creative state take over whatever the biggest problem is that I'm having in business at that moment, the biggest problem I'm trying to solve. And so knowing that I have that time has really helped me, and sort of subconsciously, I find that my ideas start flowing towards the end of that state. And I really know to transition out of meditation when one of two things happens. Either I grow uncomfortable sitting the way that I'm sitting, or I just get a lot of ideas. And so I know, okay, it's time to transition over. And then once I'm done thinkitating, then I read. Depending on what time I wake up, will determine how long I let myself read. But I normally read for about an hour. And then once I'm done reading, then I go into my important things list. And so I don't check email ever. And I have a whole thing about that. I still can't believe how often people spend in their email. And my important things list is in order of the most important things that I should be doing for my business. It's not stuff to think about, it's stuff to do. So it's very much an action item list. And I just begin immediately pushing that forward.
Okay, so is it like a tool, like an app you use, or is it just pen and paper?
Literally, it's Evernote. So it's just a list that I make in Evernote so I can put detailed notes about where we are with a given project, what the next step is, what I need to do, but that I have a history as well to give myself context if it's been a couple days since I touched it.
So in regards to the to-do list, do you have a specific time it has to be done, or is it just free flow? You got to just do the top things first?
Some things have a deadline. Other things are just, it's sequential. So this is the thing at the top, because so often you're going to be able to push it forward, but you're not going to be able to complete it. And that was what was really frustrating me, is there were so many things that I wanted to push forward, but I couldn't complete any of them in that moment. And so you would push it forward and then forget about it because let's say it was going to be 5 or 6 hours before you could expect a response or whatever. And so if I didn't have that list, which is always more than I can do in a given day, you find yourself going to whatever is speaking up, right? So that's why people check email, because you don't have to think, right? You just go and respond. So I wanted to make sure that the things I was responding to were things that when I was being at my most strategic and thinking through it, oftentimes during that thinkitation process, I knew do this, then this, then this, then this. And so you just start working through them and then making sure that they're always actions. It's not pontification. And that's where I think a lot of people fall down. They're not demanding of themselves massive action all day, every day. And so I live in my important things list, and I'm just always returning to it. Anytime where I have a moment of downtime, back to the important things, so that you're always moving something forward.
So by the end of the day, do you normally complete everything on your important list, or does that continue to the next day?
Almost always continues, and it's always fun to be able to take something off because it's finished. But because so many of the projects I'm involved on are very complex, sort of multi-month things that really take time. Unfortunately, as much as I wish this weren't true, it's usually a line item in a grander thing that I'm taking off my list versus like that whole thing now is, off to the side.
So what dictates something that's important in your life?
So if you know what your goal is, and your goal is insanely specific, you've worked backwards on all the action items that it's going to take to get to that thing, then it's literally, marking off those items. Now, here's the problem. If you're not good at identifying what you actually have to do to get to your goal, now you've got problems. And where I find most people fall down is their goal lacks specificity. Your goal has to be comically specific. So when I think about like our mission is to pull people out of the matrix, but we have all these goals that necessitates, right? So even so our path, I believe that the way to pull people out of the matrix is to fundamentally change one of the most base level operating system, places in their mindset, that belief system. How do you do that? The way that humans assimilate truly disruptive information is through narrative. Okay, so if we're going to believe that, which I believe to the core of my being, how do we use narrative to disrupt that belief system? And then who's done that well? Disney. What have they done? How can we replicate it? So I know that Disney makes a massive amount of their revenue through merchandising. So I actually think of us as a merchandising company, which once you understand that, then you understand the moves that we're making. So now, okay, if we're a merchandising company, how do we sell merchandise? What drives merchandise? Intellectual property. Why, by the way, why is merchandising important? It's this thing called self-signaling. So it's like, this is the kind of stuff that I'm breaking down till I get to the point where my to-do list is about the things that we need to do to create the intellectual property, which starts as a comic because they're inexpensive. How do you create a comic, right? You've got to write it, you've got to find artists, and okay, so how are you going to find the artists and the writers? Holding contests. How do you hold contests? You create partnerships. How do you create the partnerships, right? So that's the specificity level, where what I'm executing on all day is like contracts, partnerships, getting those rudimentary things that are going to give us, in this particular example, the writers and artists that we need, getting the stories that we need to tell, making sure that the intellectual property is right, making sure that it echoes the ethos that we want, but it's all feeding back up into pulling people out of the matrix. So, but that's the level of specificity, right? Until you get all the way down to knowing what person, company, whatever do I need to partner with in order to create this thing? Like, you don't have enough specificity. And that's where I think people really fail, because they don't have specificity, because they haven't spent the requisite amount of time identifying what the exact concrete steps are that they're going to have to execute against in order to monetize. No one wants to talk about that, but you don't have a business unless you're monetizing. Like, those are the things that you have to do in order to actually build a successful business.
Right. I want to take it back to earlier on when you was talking about the importance of meditation, because it calms the little voice, let's say, that prevents the intuition coming in. How important do you believe your intuition has been in regards to your level of success, having co-founded a $1 billion company, Quest Nutrition, and gone on to create Impact Theory? Is that truly just based on intuition, or is it more logical? What's really behind that for you? How important is it?
Intuition is really important, but what people have to understand is you're not born with intuition. You train the life out of your intuition. So your intuition is based on the things you think obsessively about, the goals that you have, giving yourself the mental quiet space to actually hear those things, that it's going to start as an interest, and you're going to gain your intuition by training it through the process of gaining mastery. So if you want to have better intuition about people, which was really important to me at Quest because we were hiring people so much. So I began to take notes when I was interviewing people. I had this thing that I called the 7-second journal, so that within 7 seconds you get a feeling about somebody. And to write down that feeling and then figure out over time if you were right or wrong about that, that is really critical. But it was understanding that I have to train my intuition. So if I want to have a gut instinct, I need to do something to develop that gut instinct. And that's where I think people misunderstand intuition, because they think, oh, well, I either have it or I don't. It's not that at all. Like, you develop that through immersion by getting really involved in something. And the more you do it, the more you reflect back on what you're getting, all of a sudden you'll start to be like, oh, I have instincts. I have that intuition. So take marketing. I've been obsessively focused on marketing for 15 years. I mean, obsessively focused. So now I have intuition, but I didn't have intuition, say, 12 years ago, right? There was nothing. And then you begin to refine that. And so really diving into something, holding yourself to a standard of results, letting that feedback loop of, I had this hypothesis, I tried it, I got this result, either good or bad, and letting that begin to inform that gut instinct, that's where it really becomes important. So yes, it's important, but understand it's not something that you were gifted. You weren't born with it. You have to develop it.
So what would you say to those people who want to develop intuition, but they don't know which intuition to really build up because they're just lacking clarity just overall? What advice would you give to those people?
So the really important thing for people to understand is, just like intuition, your passion is developed. It isn't something that's discovered. So when I hear people say, how do I find my XYZ? I want to make it abundantly clear. You don't find anything. You develop something. So you have little interests. The interests build from encountering a lot of things. So a lot of that encountering you do early on because your parents introduce you to stuff. But you can put yourself in a position just to encounter a wide variety of things. I think that there are really critical points in your life where you should just say yes to everything, so that you can get out there, encounter a whole bunch of different things, and find which one of those things not uncovers some deep passion. It's going to develop an interest for you. And it'll be kind of a small interest. So you go and do something and, whoa, something fascinates you. This is interesting. Then, and if you turn inward and you see like a bunch of those things now that are a little bit interesting, you have a mild fascination with it, you want to explore it more, it's in that exploration process that you find if you're really interested in it. And then if you're really interested in it, go down a path of gaining mastery, actually try to get really good, like truly world class. And in that process, it'll either develop into a passion or it won't. And so as you get better and better and better, that's when something that was an interest or a fascination really begins to snowball into a true passion. Once you have a passion, then it's like, okay, in this passion, is there something that I could make the true mission of my life? Now, make is the key word. You decide that you're going to make it your mission. You didn't discover it. It wasn't some thing that was hidden in you your whole life. It was a process of turning an encounter into an interest and a fascination, developing that and finding out if it's something you want to pursue mastery, pursuing mastery, developing it to a true passion, finding that you really do have a passion, and then seeing if there's something in that that you can monetize. And then if you can monetize it, then you can make like a nice stated mission. I'm going to do this thing. But all along that path, it wasn't, digging into your truest self and finding that, lo and behold, hiding within you all these years with some secret deep passion and meaning of your life. And that's what I think confuses people, because they're like, oh shit, I'm the only one that doesn't have like some guiding principle in my life. It doesn't work like that. You're going to develop that stuff.
Right. I couldn't agree more with you. So I saw earlier on, I was actually checking out your speech from, I can't remember exactly which event, but you was talking about the fact that you wasn't born as an entrepreneur. Now, I want to ask you this question. Do you believe if you weren't born as an entrepreneur, but you've been able to really create yourself into a successful entrepreneur, let's say, do you believe anybody on this planet has a capability of creating a $1 billion or co-founding a $1 billion company? Or do you believe you've done something differently from the masses out there?
That's interesting. So you threw a curveball at the end. So yes, I believe anybody who meets minimum requirements. So we can't fully discount cognitive ability. I would love to. But it's a lot lower than I think a lot of people believe. So if I'm not mistaken, Richard Branson, one of the most successful entrepreneurs of all time, has an IQ of below 100, just to give you an idea. But yet this guy's gone on to be mega successful. So I think the requirements are a lot lower than people think, but I also believe that I have done something different than the masses. But what I've done that's different than the masses is spend all of my time building a belief set that empowers me, and then being a total slave to that belief system. So I'll give you an example. I truly believe that you can do anything you set your mind to. But once you believe you can do anything you set your mind to without limitation, how you spend your time becomes a spiritual consideration. So I am so careful about how I spend my time, about what I allow myself to believe, about what I allow myself to reinforce in myself, what I expect of myself, the amount that I demand of myself, how hard I work, the amount of hours that I put in. So it is to do that, right? To succeed at that level, to build something that's never been seen before. You're going to have to make unimaginable demands of yourself. So much so that whatever you think it's going to be, you're at a fraction of it when you start. And that's probably good, because if you actually understood like how big it is, you might not take the first step. But as long as you put at the core of that I'm going to love the journey, as cheesy as that is, that I'm actually going to have fun in the process, that's when you can really do something extraordinary, because you're going to have the energy to keep pushing, to keep learning, to keep growing, to fight when it gets hard, because you're actually having fun like in that process. And I've done it both ways. I've done it where I was not enjoying the process and it was like, just get to the other side. It's a total soul suck. And now I realize that I'm going to put at the center of this, because the struggle is guaranteed, the success is not. So if the struggle is guaranteed and the success is not, make sure you believe in your mission and make sure that the path of execution is actually something that you'll enjoy.
So you had a company that you co-founded. Was it in the tech space when you create some level of success in the business, but you wasn't fulfilled? Was that the tech company? Or
It was. It would be very generous to say that I co-founded it. And I've sort of always gone back and forth. Really, they hired me as a copywriter. And they gave me the option to bust my ass so hard that I could earn my way into a partnership, which I did. But the truth of the matter is they had like that ball rolling before I came along. I came along so early and worked so hard. But that was when I was chasing money. But that journey, I think, is pretty interesting of what does it look like to go from a copywriter to a partner? What does it take? Like, how hard do you have to work? How much better do you have to get? What kind of standard do you have to hold yourself to? And quite frankly, they had to be open to that, and they had to foster that and create that environment, which is just an unbelievable gift. And I'll forever be grateful to them for that.
So back then you were chasing money. Did you manage to get money by chasing it?
I did, but like not a lot. There's levels to this shit, as they say. So I was making more money than I'd ever made, and I had ownership in a multi-million-dollar company. So technically, on paper, like I had a level of success, but it was just so empty. And now, like if I woke up tomorrow with making the money that I was making then, I would be very depressed. So yeah, it was more than I'd ever made, but it was, eh.
So was it from then you basically thought of the idea, or you co-founded the company called Quest Nutrition? Was it straight after this company?
Yeah, it was in the middle of that company. So I burned out so much on chasing money. I was like, and this is making a very long story very short, but I I was so profoundly unhappy chasing money, and I finally had more money than I was making, and I had ownership, and it was just miserable. I was so unhappy, and I was like, this is just stupid. I'm literally living the cliche of money can't buy happiness. This is an absolute joke. Like I'm self-aware enough that I couldn't believe that it happened to me. So I finally just got to the point where I told my wife, I can't keep doing this anymore. I went into my partners and I quit. And I said, guys, here's your equity back. If I don't cross the finish line, I don't think I should get anything for this. But I can't do this anymore. I literally feel dead inside. And so I leave and they're like totally caught off guard. And they call me and say, look, come out to dinner. And they say the now famous words, we could do this without you, but we don't want to. And so come out to dinner. I went out to dinner and we talked about, I said basically, if you want to keep working with me, I've got to put creating value at the center of my life. I'm never going to chase money again. That left me totally miserable. I'm only going to do that which makes me happy in the moment. So I'm changing my question to what's the most profitable to what would I love doing every day, even if I were failing. And that now is going to be the question that I ask myself. And they were like, we actually feel the same way. We felt this way for a long time. Also, so let's set ourselves a goal. If we don't hit this financial goal in the next 6 months, then we'll sell the company. And so we didn't hit the goal. And so we began the process of selling the company. And in that process, for three very different reasons, decided that that company that we wanted to do that was going to be predicated on value creation and really being our true authentic selves and all of that was going to be Quest Nutrition. And so it was ironic because we're like, we're never going to lead with money again. It's always going to be about asking what's most valuable to our employees and our community. We're going to build community. It's all going to be based around that. We had no idea if that would make for a successful business or not. We just knew that's what we'll enjoy. Like that's what will ignite our passions. And it's going to be our passion that's going to let us fight through the hard times. And ironically, and no longer leading with money and profits and all of that and just really trying to do something beautiful and amazing, we were way more successful. And Quest ended up making more in a day than the technology company did annually. It was crazy.
Got onto the is it Inc. 500, number two?
Yeah.
Wow, it's incredible. Now, I can, I've heard, let's say, about adding value, focusing on adding value, and I've also given this advice out here on the channel before, and the comments I often got is, Tim, it's great to focus on adding value, but I'm in a situation where I've got no money, so I'm focusing on money. Now, would you, for those of people who are in that situation, would you still say to them, just focus on adding value, and just kind of drown out that little voice which is focusing on money? Or what would you say to those people?
So here's the truth. You can't just focus on the value, right? So you have to have business savvy. Like you have to build a business. And I think most people, their first instinct when they think about adding value is they design a nonprofit. And the problem with that is you're still going to have to go focus on money. Like you're still going to go have to raise money. But now you're coming in with your hand out. You can't control it by adding value. You have to go to people who found a way to add value to other people that have amassed wealth and say, can you please give me some of that? Or best case, you go crowdsource, you crowdfund, but you're going to have to keep doing that, raising money, unless you have a product that people would rather have than the amount of money that you're charging for it. So the great news is the only thing that you can sell reliably over time is value. So the most fundamental business principle of making money is create something of value. So this isn't like hold hands and sing kumbaya, add value. This is just you're elevating value to your primary objective. So there are going to be times where you're doing something that is less profitable than the other thing, but it needs to bring more value so that you're actually able to move more units. So look at Quest Nutrition. there were 1,000 different times where we had an opportunity to use cheaper ingredients that would have delivered less value, and we didn't. We chose to use the more expensive ingredient because it added more value at a metabolic level. So there were times where the end user didn't even necessarily know or necessarily care, but we knew if we make a product that is more metabolically advantageous, in the long run, it's going to win because more people are going to recommend it. The people who really know and understand it, they're going to push it harder, talk about it, promote it because they know that it's real. So that is a great example of how I'm not thinking about money in the I'm going to do whatever is more profitable way of thinking about money, which is a trap a lot of people fall into. I'm thinking about value creation because it will move more units. So that's where you also have to have business acumen. You also have to be profitable. And if you're not, you will rapidly go out of business. You will not be able to pay your rent. So that's why, like, I don't understand people who are conflicted between my business has to be profitable and I'm going to charge you more for it than it costs me to make it. And if it doesn't add enough value, you won't pay for it. But people who are like fundamentally averse to that, that doesn't make sense. Like that product will go away. So because they won't, like, just think down the food chain. They won't be able to pay their employees. And the people who rail against companies charging, for their product and making a profit are the same people that are like, well, you have to pay me, a wage that recognizes my value. I totally agree. But that means that I also then have to sell this for a profit. So people getting conflicted about that, I think, is because they're not thinking first and foremost, the only thing I can sell is value. So if you put that at the core of your existence and demand of yourself, you don't make an easy product, you don't make a product that's cheap, you make a product that actually delivers value, and you become like obsessed with that and do the hard ass work of making that product. That's the juice. But then if you've done that, then you should be able to monetize it because people would rather have the product than the money that you charge for it.
Right. So in Quest Nutrition, what was your actual role within the company? Was it still a marketer or was it something else?
Yeah, so I was the head of marketing and sales. So I was officially the president, co-founder, but that was my focus, marketing and sales.
Okay, so how did you manage to growth hack this business so fast? I'm sure there's loads of things you did, but if you was to put it down to, let's say, 3 things that you did that had the biggest impact on you getting to the Inc. 500, what would it be?
Well, so one of the, like, if you asked me to name 3 things, only one of them would be the area that I was focused on. So we broke the company into 3 distinct areas, and there were 3 founders. So that was for a reason. So we had product, people, and process. So the product is one of them. Without the product being high quality, you just can't you can't deliver the value that your marketing is promising. So the product has got to be right. Then the next was we had to create a whole new way of manufacturing protein bars, so process, in order to make the product that we wanted to make. So that was hugely important, our willingness to become our own manufacturer, which essentially nobody else was doing, and it was one of the biggest risks that we took. And then the third was we were doing social media marketing exclusively before virtually anybody was doing social media marketing. I mean, we started thinking about the company back in 2009. So in 2009, social media was not what it is today. Companies were not using it the way that they're using it today. Companies are only really just now really starting to understand how to leverage social media. The term influencer didn't even exist, certainly not in a popular enough way that we had heard about it. So we were just trying to build community. Like our thing was community. I just want people to talk. I want people to connect. I want to help celebrate them and what they've accomplished. And so looking at social media, it was like, social media isn't a distraction, which is what everybody was calling it. Social media is a megaphone, and it gives people the opportunity to talk. And so if you're delivering enough value that they're going to say something positive, you've got this powerful vehicle. And back then it was essentially free, right? Facebook hadn't chop their algorithm down. So if people were liking you, they were going to see the stuff that you were putting out. Now you've got to get a lot more clever. You've got to do more of the hacking, but the community building stays the same regardless. And if the community that you're putting together, there's value for them being part of your community, the content that you're putting out isn't meant to sell. It's meant to engage. It's meant to get them believing in you, understanding who you are, understanding your brand, connecting with other people that think like you think, like really feeding and fostering that community with something that in and of itself, even if they never buy your product, is beneficial to their life. Now they want to be associated with your brand. Now they want to support you. And if your product also delivers that value, now you've got a home run. And look, a part of it was the timing, right? We understood that before other people understood it. So we landed with a product that was right. It was real. We were doing marketing in a way nobody else was doing, right at a time when social media was in its infancy. So enough people were there and they were talking. And we just got right that we weren't asking them to say a certain thing. Our whole thing was love it or hate it, just talk. And because people didn't feel like we were trying to coerce them into saying something and that we wanted to be held to a standard, like people just went nuts, just talking. It was amazing.
Do you think timing had a lot to do with the success of the growth?
No question. Anybody that tells you that timing isn't real or luck isn't real is fooling themselves. Now, luck favors the prepared, so you need to be prepared, but I wouldn't try to do Quest over again today the way that we did it. We'd have to find a new way to do it. There's just no two ways about it.
Okay, since the company is still being marketed today, how would you go about growth hacking it, let's say at that level again today?
Well, this is fascinating. So one, it's very important to say I'm no longer at Quest. So about 9 months ago, I stepped out of my role and moved into a founder role. So I still have massive ownership in the company, but I'm not at all involved in a day-to-day basis. And I don't want to heckle them, so they're not doing the things that I would necessarily do if I were there. And when you're not in the business, I think it's very, very unfair to say from the outside like what they should be doing. But nonetheless, because you asked, I will say the movement that I think is happening in marketing that if I were still there on a daily basis, I would be doing is exactly what I'm doing now. So influencer marketing is real. It's the next wave. And the reason that I think that it's so powerful and the reason I think big brands especially should be doing it is because millennials and Gen Z especially demand two things. They're what I call the new kingmakers: authenticity and transparency. And when I was a kid, there was this whole thing called the corporate veil, and the people behind the company wanted to hide behind the corporate veil. They didn't want you to know who owned the company. They wanted that ownership to be essentially invisible. And there was this whole concept of like piercing the corporate veil and all this stuff. And you still see that echoing through companies in a huge way, where very few owner operators are stepping forward and saying, this is who I am. This is who I am. This is what I stand for. This is what I believe in. This is what this company is going to do and make come true in the world. Talking about their mission and what they're trying to do, being community focused. So that's why I spun because we had created a studio inside of Quest. And I spun that out into a standalone company because I believe that's the way forward. I believe the way forward to really have the kind of impact you want, there has to be one of the executives, at least one of the executives in your company has to step forward and say, this is who we are. This is what we're about. Give people a chance to connect. Give people a chance to see who you are. Give people a chance to understand all those profits that are going to you and your company. What are you going to do with them? Like, what does that look like? And so that is, I think, very, very important. I think more and more marketing is going to become truly value-add content creation. I think that while we'll see somewhat of a reconsolidation of content creation, we're already beginning to see that with Netflix, with Amazon, that they're snatching up so much of this. YouTube is now trying to be more TV-like. And I think those are important steps, but you're also going to see this fragmentation of really valuable content and personalities getting out there. So why do I spend so much of my time doing content, coming on podcasts like this? Because I know no one's going to get behind impact theory unless they know what we're trying to do, unless they know what we're trying to accomplish, unless they know what it means to support, and quite frankly, because I believe that I can help people develop a skill set that will serve them no matter what they're doing, so that the content that we put out into the world is truly, truly value add. We do it entirely for free. We don't charge for anything. We don't have courses behind a paywall. It's like, dude, I'm trying to give the value like as much as humanly possible. I'm trying to give the value away. So that is, I think, the new paradigm.
So with this current impact theory company, what is your vision for it moving forwards? How big do you want to really take it?
Well, our goal is to beat Disney at their own game. So we are a traditional narrative studio that if you're going to be David versus Goliath, which us versus Disney is very much David versus Goliath, you can't play Goliath's game, right? So they they acquire things, right? So they acquired Pixar, they acquired Marvel, they acquired Star Wars. Like they get that game and they're very good at it. And while I think of them as our rival, I'm also blown away by what they're doing. And I just think they're an amazing company. So it's what I like to think of as a healthy rivalry. And I really like what they bring to the world. And I think there's a lot of positivity to what they do. And I'm just a huge fan as well. So what we're trying to do is learn from them and leverage what the business model, if you will, which is called a total merchandising strategy. So our goal is to create intellectual property that is empowering. Now, the one thing that no other studio has understood about Disney, or if they've understood it, they have not had the discipline to recreate it, and that is to recognize that what Disney has done, every piece of content that they release feeds into a single brand ethos, right? The magic of childhood. So everything has this uplifting, fun, positive quality. By the end of the movie, you know that the good guy is going to win, the bad guys are going to be punished, right? That is the Disney ethos. And because every piece of content they do feeds into that, when I say I'm going to go see a Disney movie, you already know something about it. If I say I'm going to go see a Sony movie or a Warner Brothers movie, you don't know anything about it. But when I say Disney, like you get it because they've been so diligent and being on brand and feeding into that. It's just absolutely incredible. So that's what we want to do, but in a different vein, all about empowerment, all about breaking people out of the matrix, getting people to understand, even if it's invisible to them, a new belief system. So if culture drives a large portion of your belief system, how do we leverage that narrative, which, as I was talking about earlier, is the way that people assimilate truly disruptive information. The way that we construct our belief system largely comes from narrative. So that's why we're going to be dealing in the world of books, comic books, TV shows, movies, and video games. Those are the 5 dominant forms of narrative. But we understand how to leverage social, going back to not playing Goliath's game. So we understand social. So we're going to be crowdsourcing a lot of our creative. We're going to be engaging with the community to build communities around our creative so that we can maintain merchandising rights. Because in the early days, we're going to have to leverage the infrastructure that's already there, selling things to Netflix, to Amazon, to traditional film distributors. So understanding that we'll have to leverage them, we need the power to go in to be able to retain some of the merchandising rights because that's where the long tail money is. Also, I believe that through self-signaling, that's how people reinforce ideology in themselves. So you'll see us do that a lot, creating merchandise that people can self-signal the ideology that we're putting out into the world. And that was a huge thing for us as we were naming the company and thinking about what do we do. I knew that we wanted to be what's called a badge brand, so that it meant something to wear, like the Impact Theory logo, you signal something to others and to yourself what that means, so that that ethos, that ideology has to be very, very clear. So it's a very big nutshell, but that's what we're doing.
Okay, and is your current role in the company still a marketing person, or is it something else?
So as the co-founder, CEO, at the end of the day, everything is feeding up through me, but I am very hardcore about making sure that you hire people that are gifted at what they do so that you're not micromanaging. So we have a director of marketing who I think is absolutely brilliant, who it would be very unfair of me to say that I'm running marketing. He is very much doing that, but we work in concert with each other and very, very closely, as I do with the heads of the other departments.
Okay, so when it comes to hiring, because I also heard when you were starting Question Nutrition, you were hiring people, I think in Compton or something, who've been to prison, because you said CV just purely just shows somebody who they've been, not so much who they're becoming. Now, when you hire, say, somebody who's up there in regards to executive or director level, do you hire people based upon their CV still, or do you prefer to train somebody up to that level, if that makes sense?
It's a balance. When, like, any business needs to understand the phase you're in. So when I was hiring the former drug dealers and the gang members and the ex-felons, that was that phase. I needed hustlers. I needed people that were going to break themselves in half to help me make this come true. Then you get into a professional manager stage. And at that point, if you don't hire people with an awesome CV, you're in real trouble. Like, they have to know how to manage people. They have to know how to build systems. They have to know how to scale. And one of the biggest mistakes I made at Quest was being too slow to recognize that transition, because we were growing so fast that if I had to do it over again, I would actually bring professional managers in earlier. So I loved that we went through that phase of like those diehard hustlers, and it was beautiful. And some of the most meaningful experiences and relationships in my life came from that phase. But you do have to, at some point, bring in real expertise. People who have been there, done that, they've seen it 1,000 times. They will stop you from making a lot of rookie mistakes. So I think it's really, really important to have somebody who isn't an expert. So I'll put myself in that, right? Going into an area where it's totally new, you're totally fresh, you don't have preconceived notions. But then you also need to get experts who have been there, who have the knowledge, the deep knowledge, the real expertise. Otherwise, you're just going to make unnecessary mistakes.
Okay. You're full of you're like wealth of knowledge because of your experience with launching your companies and having the successes. One of the questions we got asked within our community to ask you was on the lines of, if, let's say, for example, tomorrow you wake up with literally zero in the bank and you have to become resourceful and make something happen, what would be the first couple steps you would do? What would you do in that situation?
It's not going to give them the answer they want, because here's the truth of what I would do. So I would go raise capital, right? Because I've got the background with which to pull that off. So I would go raise capital, which, by the way, I would not want to do. Raising capital is like the last thing I'd want to do. But if I woke up with zero in the bank account, you've got to get access to capital somewhere. So I would either go, if there was someone doing something very similar to a mission that's really, really true to me, and they had a culture that I could really, really jive on, I would go and say, look, for equity in the company and a salary that'll let me eat, I'll join this company. And you have to imagine in that meeting, I'm going to be very persuasive. And I would walk in with a very detailed path of what I would do over the first 90 days alone to supercharge what they're doing. I would understand their business so well going into that, they would be unnerved. They would wonder how I knew so much about their business. And that's really become, as an interviewer, that's really become my calling card. It's just, I know how to research. So showing up uber prepared. So those are like the two paths. The honest one is I would almost certainly go straight to raise capital. I would have a business that I wanted to create. I would show them exactly the product that we're going to make and how that it's going to be very financially advantageous for them to partner with me. But to maybe be a little more accessible to some of the people in your audience, the alternate is to go be a linchpin in somebody else's company and show up, man, understanding them, really having deep insights into how you can help them, and not being afraid to give every single one of those insights away in that meeting. Because my goal in that meeting would be to get them at the end of that meeting going, like, if that's what he can give us in an hour or 30 minutes or however long I have with them, what happens if we bring him on? Because my thing is, like, if you're a consultant and you can give away all your secrets in an hour-long meeting, you don't have secrets. I mean, that's crazy. In the day of the internet, the only thing that matters is execution. So you've got to show them that not only do you have a wealth of tremendous ideas that are based on what they're actually trying to do, but that you know how to execute. So in that meeting, I would literally talk as fast as I could so that they could see, dude, I'm just trying to get there. Like, I've got so much more than I can possibly convey in this hour that you're going to want to be with me. And if they brought me back for another interview, I would give more away and more away and more away until they realize, all right, there's no end to this.
Wow. Tom, I just want to say it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on board, and so much value. I can only imagine people taking notes. It must be like a couple of pages long now, but really, really appreciate it. If you were to, let's say, leave all of the insiders tuning in today with one final message that will help them to, I suppose, break out the matrix, I should say, and really get to that next level in their life, what advice would you give them? The one single piece of advice moving forwards.
All right, so this is unrelated to anything that we've talked about, but is one of the most important things everybody needs to understand. You need self-esteem, you need ego, you need pride, but what you choose to pride yourself on is immeasurably important. If you're priding yourself on being right or having the right answer, you are doomed, and you need to immediately switch your identity, your self-esteem, your pride, everything over to being the learner and identifying the right answer, no matter where it comes from, faster than anyone else, and then putting your energy behind that. If you can do that, my friends, you will go places.
Amazing. Tom, once again, thank you so much for coming on to the Success Insider show.
Absolutely my pleasure, man. Thank you so much for having me on. It really is an honor.
Thank you. Thank you, Insiders, for tuning in. And as always, my friend, follow your heart and take action and go live the life.